March 14, 2023, New York City. The towering skyline of Manhattan stood still under the cover of night, its shimmering lights reflecting off the glass buildings. Most of the city had begun to wind down, but inside the Carter Enterprises headquarters, on the 21st floor, a scene of unspeakable violence had just unfolded. The office smelled of gunpowder and blood. Papers were scattered across the polished hardwood floor. A leather chair toppled over near the massive glass window. In the center of the chaos lay Nathan Carter, his designer suit stained deep red, his lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. A single gunshot wound to the chest. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows framed a haunting backdrop, the glowing city lights that continued as if nothing had happened. But something had happened, and whoever had done this had made sure there were no witnesses. The crime scene was eerily pristine. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks. Whoever had pulled the trigger had been inside before Nathan Carter had even realized the danger. Had he let his killer in? Had he known the person who wanted him dead? A phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. Emma Carter. Her name flashed on the screen of the dead man's phone, the last call he ever received. The first officer on the scene swallowed hard as he called it in. "Dispatch, this is Officer Reynolds. We have a confirmed homicide." He exhaled, staring at the body. "Looks personal." As the investigation began, only one question mattered. Who killed Nathan Carter? And why was his lover's husband nowhere to be found? Emma Carter had once believed in fairy tales. She had married young, swept off her feet by Ryan Carter, a man who promised her the world. Their wedding had been picture perfect, an elegant ceremony, whispered vows, and the kind of love that felt like it could withstand anything. But that was a long time ago, before the distance, before the silence, before the unspoken resentment that slowly replaced passion. On the outside, they were still the perfect couple. Ryan Carter was a respected financial consultant, a man who provided well, who never let Emma want for anything except love. Their life was built on expensive vacations, fine dining, and the illusion of happiness. But behind closed doors, the reality was much colder. Ryan Carter had become distant, emotionally absent. The late nights at the office turned into full weekends away. Conversations became transactional. What bills needed to be paid, what events they had to attend. He was there, but never really there. And Emma Carter? She had stopped trying to reach him a long time ago. It hadn't always been like this. There had been a time when Ryan Carter would hold her close, when his eyes still burned with something real. But things had changed. Maybe it was his career. Maybe it was something else. Or maybe deep down he just didn't care anymore. And then Nathan Carter entered her life. It started as nothing, just casual conversations between a boss and his employee. Nathan Carter was charming, confident, a man who commanded attention. The second he walked into a room. Unlike Ryan Carter, he noticed Emma. He listened when she spoke. And he didn't just make her feel wanted, he made her feel seen. The first time he touched her, it was a simple brush of fingers as he handed her a file. But it was enough to send a thrill through her. She knew it was dangerous, she knew it was wrong. But she also knew one undeniable truth. She hadn't felt alive in years. Late-night meetings turned into long conversations. A lingering glance became a stolen kiss. Before she could stop herself, Emma Carter had crossed a line she could never come back from. She convinced herself that Ryan Carter would never find out. He barely noticed her anymore. He didn't ask where she went, who she was with. He had stopped caring. But what Emma Carter didn't realize was that Ryan Carter had been watching all along. He wasn't oblivious. He wasn't distant because he didn't care. He was distant because he knew. And while Emma Carter was lost in her affair, Believing she had control over her secret life, Ryan Carter was planning something else entirely, something far worse than she could ever imagine. The first time Emma Carter and Nathan Carter crossed the line, it had been impulsive. A business trip in Chicago, a hotel suite too luxurious to waste alone, and a bottle of red wine that loosened inhibitions. It was supposed to be one mistake, a moment of weakness. But mistakes don't feel this good, and weakness doesn't make your heart race like this. What started as stolen glances turned into whispered conversations behind closed doors. Soon Emma Carter wasn't just meeting Nathan Carter at work. She was sneaking away in the middle of the afternoon, lying about brunches with friends and making excuses for why she smelled like his cologne when she got home. Guilt should have stopped her, but the thrill? It was intoxicating. Nathan Carter made her feel alive in ways Ryan Carter never had. With him, she felt wanted, seen, desired. With Ryan Carter, she felt invisible. At least, that's what she thought. She didn't know her husband had been watching. The first sign should have been the way Ryan Carter started looking at her differently. Longer stares, quiet moments where he seemed to study her. The second sign should have been the way he started asking specific questions. Did you have lunch with Sarah today? You were working late again? It wasn't what he asked, it was how he asked. But Emma Carter was too blinded by her affair to notice the shift. She didn't see the trap closing in around her. One night, after slipping into bed past midnight, Emma Carter checked her phone one last time before turning it off. A message from Nathan Carter flashed on the screen. "I can't keep pretending. He doesn't deserve you." Her stomach twisted. Nathan Carter had always known the rules. This was a secret. He had his own reputation to protect. But now he was changing the game. The next morning at the office, she confronted him. What was that message last night? Nathan Carter leaned against his desk, arms crossed, a smirk playing at his lips. "Why are you panicking? You think your husband suspects something?" Emma Carter felt a cold dread settle in her chest. "He's been acting different." Nathan Carter took a step closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then maybe it's time we stop hiding." Her breath hitched. "Nathan, that's not an option." His smile faded. "Why not?" Emma Carter swallowed hard. Because Ryan isn't the type of man you cross." Nathan Carter chuckled, shaking his head. "He's a financial consultant, Emma. What's he going to do? Cancel my credit card?" But Emma Carter wasn't laughing. Because Ryan Carter was more than just a husband who had been betrayed. He was a man who had a plan. That night, Ryan Carter sat alone in his home office, staring at the photos spread across his desk. Emma Carter, laughing in a dimly lit restaurant. Nathan Carter's hand resting on her thigh. Another picture. Emma Carter leaving a hotel, her hair tousled. Nathan Carter trailing behind her. Ryan Carter exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping against the wooden desk. He had known for months. He had been waiting for the right moment, and now the moment had arrived. Nathan Carter thought he was in control. He thought this affair was his game, but he had just made a fatal mistake. He had underestimated the man he was stealing from, and soon Nathan Carter would pay the ultimate price. Ryan Carter sat in the dim glow of his office, staring at the whiskey, swirling in his glass. The ice clinked softly against the crystal as he leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked on the laptop screen in front of him. He had been watching them for weeks, Emma Carter and Nathan Carter. The late-night rendezvous, the hushed conversations, the stolen moments they thought no one would ever notice. But Ryan Carter noticed everything. He had suspected the affair, long before he had proof. The way Emma Carter's perfume lingered on her clothes long after she claimed she'd been at work, the sudden shift in her schedule, the newfound attention to her appearance. At first, He thought it was desperation, a wife trying to make her husband notice her again, but then he saw them together, and everything changed. He had followed her one evening, the suspicion eating away at him like poison. Emma Carter wasn't. Careful. She thought Ryan Carter was blind, oblivious, but he wasn't. He was patient. He waited. And when he saw her step into Nathan Carter's sleek black car outside the office, her laughter ringing through the night, something inside him snapped. Now he had proof. Photos, messages, phone records. But Ryan Carter wasn't interested in a messy divorce or public humiliation. He wanted something far more permanent. That night, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. The voice on the other end answered after a single ring. "Need a favor?" Ryan Carter said, his voice calm. Ryan Carter exhaled, his grip tightening around his glass. "I need someone to disappear." The plan had to be flawless. Nathan Carter was too smart, too connected for a sloppy attack. Ryan Carter had no intention of pulling the trigger himself. That would be reckless. Instead, he would set the stage, let the pieces fall into place, and watch Nathan Carter's arrogance lead him straight to his own grave. A few days later, he planted the bait. A business deal, one that Nathan Carter couldn't resist. A private meeting, exclusive, confidential. Nathan Carter took it without hesitation. Greed always made men predictable. Emma Carter had no idea. She continued playing her dangerous game, sneaking around with Nathan Carter, whispering about a future they would never have. Meanwhile, Ryan Carter was orchestrating the final act. The night of the meeting arrived. Nathan Carter entered the dimly lit parking garage where he had been told to meet a potential investor. He adjusted his cufflinks, checked his watch, and smirked. He was untouchable. He had wealth, power, and now Ryan Carter's wife. He never saw it coming. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, footsteps echoing through the empty space. Nathan Carter barely had time to react before a sharp pain exploded in his ribs, a knife twisting deep into his side. His breath hitched, his knees buckling as warm blood spilled onto the concrete. He gasped, his mind racing. What the hell? The figure crouched beside him, pressing a gloved hand over his mouth. "Ryan Carter sends his regards," the voice murmured, barely more than a whisper. Nathan Carter's eyes widened. He had underestimated the wrong man. His body collapsed against the pavement, his blood pooling beneath him. By the time the police found him, the killer was already gone. Ryan Carter stood at home, pouring himself another drink as the news flashed across the TV screen. Breaking news: prominent CEO found murdered. Police investigating possible business dispute. Emma Carter walked into the room, her face pale, her phone trembling in her hands. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Nathan's dead." "Ryan." Carter turned, setting his glass down with a slow, deliberate movement. His expression was unreadable, his gaze piercing. "Is that so?" he said quietly. Emma Carter didn't know whether to grieve or to be afraid, because something in Ryan Carter's eyes told her the truth. He knew everything. Nathan Carter never made it home that night. The last sighting of him was on a security camera, entering the dimly lit parking garage beneath his office building. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. He had just wrapped up a late-night business meeting, but he wasn't alone. Someone had been waiting for him in the shadows. The police report would later confirm that Nathan Carter never even had a chance to fight back. His attacker was precise, quick, efficient, and ruthless. The knife wound was deep, straight to the abdomen, angled upward, severing an artery. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike, how to kill without making a mess. The blood pooled quickly, soaking into the cold pavement. The weapon, missing. The security footage, corrupted, and the killer, gone without a trace. It wasn't until morning that a janitor, making his rounds through the lower levels of the parking garage, found the body. His scream echoed through the empty space, bouncing off the concrete walls. By the time the first responders arrived, Nathan Carter was long past saving. Detective Ryan Carter, no relation, just a cruel coincidence, stood over the body, glancing at the lifeless face of the once powerful CEO. "Looks clean," he murmured to his partner. "No?" "Signs of a struggle." His partner nodded, scanning the area. "Robbery," Detective Ryan Carter scoffed. "Nothing was taken. Wallet still here, watch still on his wrist. This wasn't a robbery." His eyes darkened as he stared at the wound. This was personal. Emma Carter was already awake when the police knocked on her door. The sound of the doorbell jolted her, her hands shaking as she fumbled to open it. Two officers stood on the porch, their expressions grave. "Mrs. Carter?" She swallowed hard. "Yes?" One officer glanced at his notepad before speaking. "We regret to inform you that Nathan Carter was found dead last night." Emma Carter felt the blood drain from her face. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her breath coming in shallow gasps. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real, the officer continued, his voice calm and detached. "We need you to come down to the station for some questions. You were the last person to call him." Emma Carter opened her mouth, but no words came. She barely remembered making that call just minutes before Nathan Carter was killed. She had left him a voicemail telling him she couldn't meet him that night, that something felt wrong. And now, he was dead. Ryan Carter sat across the kitchen, watching his wife. With unreadable eyes, he sipped his coffee slowly, the faintest trace of a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. He had planned every detail, and it had worked flawlessly. The police would investigate. They would follow leads, dig into Nathan Carter's life, suspect business rivals, financial enemies, but they would never suspect him. He had made sure of that. Emma Carter hesitated before stepping out the door, glancing back at Ryan Carter, searching for something. Reassurance, comfort, anything. But his expression gave her nothing. Just before she walked out, he finally spoke. "Be careful what you say, Emma," he murmured, his voice smooth as silk. Her breath caught in her throat, because suddenly she wasn't sure if she was walking into a police investigation or a trap that had been set just for her. Detective Ryan Carter sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, tapping his pen against the case file in front of him. Across from him, Emma Carter sat motionless, her fingers clenched tightly in her lap. The room smelled of stale coffee and tension, the kind that lingered in the air like an unspoken accusation. She had been here for hours. "Let's go over this again," Detective Ryan Carter said, flipping open the file. "The night Nathan Carter was murdered, you called him. Why?" Emma Carter swallowed hard. I just wanted to talk. Something felt off." Detective Ryan Carter leaned forward. "Off? What? Do you mean?" Emma Carter hesitated. Ryan was acting strange. The detective raised an eyebrow. "Your husband?" She nodded. "He knew about the affair. I could feel it." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And Nathan, he wasn't afraid of him. But I was." Detective Ryan Carter studied her. She was shaken, but was it guilt or fear? The affair was undeniable. Phone records, hotel check-ins, text messages, but proving murder was something else entirely. A knock at the door interrupted them. An officer stepped inside, a manila folder in his hands. "Sir, we found something." Detective Ryan Carter took the file, flipping it open. Inside were security camera screenshots from the parking garage. Nathan Carter entering, a dark figure lingering in the shadows, then static. The footage had been tampered with. Whoever did this knew exactly where the cameras were, the officer muttered. Emma Carter's breath hitched. Detective Ryan Carter looked up sharply. "Mrs. Carter, where was your husband that night?" Emma Carter opened her mouth, but no words came. Because she didn't know. Ryan Carter had been home when she left for bed. But when she woke up, his side of the bed had been untouched. Detective Ryan Carter leaned back in his chair, watching her closely. "You're protecting someone, Mrs. Carter." Emma Carter shook her head. "No, I—" The door swung open again. Another officer stepped inside. "Sir, we got the prints back from the crime scene." Detective Ryan Carter nodded for him to continue. The officer hesitated before speaking. "There were no fingerprints on the murder weapon." Emma Carter exhaled sharply. That meant nothing. The killer had worn gloves, but then the officer cleared his throat. "But we found something else." He placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside was a single cufflink, gold, engraved with initials. R.C. Emma Carter's breath stopped. Ryan Carter. Detective Ryan Carter let out a slow breath. "Looks like your husband made a mistake, Mrs. Carter." Emma Carter's world started spinning. Ryan had been there. She had spent years convincing herself that her husband was distant but harmless, that he was cruel but controlled. But now she saw the truth. Ryan Carter had planned this, and he had set her up to take the fall. Emma Carter closed her eyes as the detective spoke again. "Where is your husband now?" And the real terror settled deep in her bones. Because she didn't. No, Emma Carter's hands trembled as she sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, her mind racing with a truth she had been too blind to see. Ryan Carter had killed Nathan Carter. He had planned it, executed it flawlessly, and now he was out there, somewhere, watching everything unfold just as he had intended. She had been his pawn all along. Detective Ryan Carter studied her carefully, waiting for her to speak. She had two choices: stay silent and let Ryan Carter escape, or tell the truth and become his next target. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the door swung open. Another officer stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He held a small recorder in his gloved hand. "Sir, we found this at the Carter residence, hidden inside a drawer in his office." Detective Ryan Carter pressed play. At first, static. Then a voice. Ryan Carter's voice. "You thought I didn't know, didn't you? How stupid do you think I am?" A dark chuckle. "You thought you could just cheat, throw me away like I'm nothing? I spent years building this life. You were just an accessory, like a car or a watch. Disposable." Emma Carter's breath caught in her throat. Nathan Carter thought he was untouchable, thought he could take something that belonged to me. So I showed him what happens when you take what's mine. A pause, then, "I wonder how the police will react when they realize my wife was sleeping with the victim the night before he died." Emma Carter gasped. This wasn't just a confession, it was a trap. Ryan Carter had recorded this knowing it would be found. He was framing her. Detective Ryan Carter stopped the recording, his gaze locked onto her. "Mrs. Carter, did you know about this?" Emma Carter felt her pulse hammer in her ears. "No, I swear I didn't." The detective exhaled, rubbing his temple. "Your husband is 2 steps ahead of us. We need to find him before he disappears completely." A sudden knock at the door made them both jump. Another officer stepped inside, his face pale. "Sir, we found him." Detective Ryan Carter stood. "Where?" The officer swallowed. "His car was found abandoned at a private airstrip. He's gone." Emma. Carter's heart dropped. Ryan Carter had vanished, and then the final gut punch. The officer hesitated before handing over an envelope. This was left at the house, addressed to her. Emma Carter's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. "Some betrayals deserve punishment, but you You deserve worse. See you soon. Her blood ran cold. Ryan Carter wasn't just gone. He was waiting. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more stories about betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Stay tuned for more real-life crime tales that will leave you questioning the truth. And remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction. Make sure to check it out and let us know your thoughts in the comment section.